Modern Mahjong's back, and today we have a pop quiz for you. Let's see if you know the answers to the questions in the 2024 National Mahjong League Bulletin. We called the league because we had a few questions about some of the answers which we believe might contradict current rules. We will update in comments when we hear back from the league. We've also included some commentary since the league is limited on space in the answers and we have more space online. Join us on Facebook Mahjong Community and visit modernmahjong.com. We appreciate your support of our small business. Question 1. All players wanted to steal on the first left. By the way, if you don't know the term steal, that is another word for blind pass that some people call it. And blind pass, by definition, you can't look at the tiles. Back to the question. All players wanted to steal on the first left. What is the proper rule as to the number of tiles and who goes first? Great question, and this actually just came up the other day. In the event that more than one person wants to do a blind pass, East begins by passing one or two tiles and says to the next person, I owe you. Each player repeats the same thing, with East picking up their last pass of the Charleston and making good to the player whom they own the tile or tiles. It sounds confusing, but if you do it in a real game, it actually works. Question 2. When someone calls and there's an exposure on the table with a joker, and I have a tile to retrieve that joker, can I do that before I pick from the wall and then retrieve the joker, or must I pick from the wall and then retrieve the joker? Is there a rule for that? Give you a moment and we'll move on to the answer. You must always have your turn begin before. So before we get to the NMJL answer, your turn does not begin until you either pick a tile from the wall or claim a discard. So just keep that in mind. You must always pick a tile before retrieving a joker which has been exposed. The reason for this is that your turn does not begin until you pick a tile. If you attempt to redeem a joker before it is your turn, you would be called dead, as your hand would not contain the proper number of tiles. Some additional commentary from us: if you claim a discard, that also begins your turn. So you must either pick from the wall or call a tile, expose, complete your exposure, and then do a joker exchange. And in our visual guide for American Mahjong, we explain how once you pick the tile or once you claim a discard and make an exposure, that exposure must be complete before you then do the joker exchange. You cannot add a joker to a prior exposure. Moving on to question 3. If a player has 3 exposures and another player throws the tile down for Mahjong, does the player who throws the tile pay for the all, or is this a house or table rule? So the answer is, although the NMJL does allow a player to throw into a 4th exposure, there's no penalty. This is a table rule which many games have adopted. So some additional commentary from us. Mahjong Made Easy and our visual guide, we explain how the league encourages defensive play. They recommend playing defensively. Often when a player has 3 exposures or otherwise from their exposures you could tell the tile they need, that's the time where it's good to strategically break up your hand and literally start throwing tiles that you would need to win because you know you're not going to win at this point. So you break up your hand and you throw a safer tile. And this is especially true towards the end of the game when you know you're not going to win or it's unlikely you're going to win. So many, as the league answered, many games have adopted this table rule. Question 4. If I pick a tile and then exchange that tile for an exposed joker and this makes my Mahjong, does this count as me picking my Mahjong? In which case, everybody pays me double. Or does this count as the person whose joker I claimed gave me Maj, in which that case only they pay me double? Who pays in this situation? Great question, and if this happened to you, you'd be very happy that everyone pays you double. If a player exchanges a joker and then within the same turn declares Mahjong, that player gets double from all other players. It's considered self-picked. And some additional commentary: this is whether you exchange a joker from your own rack or from any other player's rack. So there has been in the prior Mahjong Made Easy, it was specific to where you pick you exchange the joker from. You get paid double no matter what. Next question, number 5. Player 1 didn't have enough tiles and threw in their hand. Player 2 threw in their hand in frustration. Player 3 had the incorrect number of tiles. Player 4 was the only player that remained with tiles in their rack, but they did not have Mahjong. Should the player 4, who remained, be paid 25 cents from players 1, 2, and 3, or is the game over and nobody wins anything? So the answer was, in the case where 3 players possess unplayable hands, we would recommend the game be thrown in and a new game started. We call the league when we receive the bulletin because we believe that the rule is the game is thrown in, not a recommendation that the game be thrown in. So we've seen that previously stated as a rule. We don't believe that this bulletin intended to change that, so we will report back if there is any difference post this video and get back to you. Question 6. This is another question that we just called the league about, and we are waiting to hear back. How are tiles distributed in a 3-player game? So we've called the league, and we believe that this answer that we're going to read below contradicts with prior bulletins and calls to the league. We'll update that when we hear back the official word. The answer in the bulletin is each player takes 4 tiles till everyone has 12. At that point, East picks 2. The other players pick 1 each, and then East has 14. The others have 13. In our visual companion guide, we have a visual which shows the reason why East doesn't pick the typical first and third that they usually do in a 4-player game. It would be left, it's not a shortcut as it is for 4 players. So everybody picks, East starts with 4, everybody picks 4 until everyone has 12. Then each player picks 1 at a time. East picks 1, player B picks 1, player C picks 1, and then East picks their 14th. That's what we believe the league still has as the rule. We don't believe this bulletin was intended to change that, but we don't know, so we will report back once we find out. Question 7. If a player calls for a discarded tile and picks it up, but does not completely put it down completely on the top of the rack, can she say, no, I changed my mind and return it to the table? So there's a very interesting question because there's so many specific rules about when you're committed to picking, when you're committed to claiming, when you're committed to discarding. You are committed to calling a discard when either you expose tiles from your rack, which is not best practices. You should first take the claim tile and put it on the flat part of your rack. So you could pick it up, you could wave it around, and you could put it back. We've never heard a distinguishing line of where on your rack, flat part of your rack, is when you're committed. So the league answered, a player may change their mind about calling a discarded tile so long as it is not placed completely on top of the rack. The tiles return to the table and the player may then pick the next tile from the wall. Some commentary from us, we're really not sure what completely down means in this situation. So if you pick up the tile and you're just resting it facing up as opposed to flat, we really think this is something that your group should discuss before playing so you all know when a player is committed to claiming a discard. Question 8. Can I do a joker exchange if I'm playing a concealed hand? So this comes up a lot. This is probably one of the most frequently asked questions. Yes, jokers can be exchanged whether you're playing concealed or exposed because you're not exposing the joker. You're exchanging it and then you're just plopping it into the sloping part of your rack. So yes, you could do a joker exchange. Question 9. A player in my game threw a red. I had an exposure of 2 reds and a joker. I wanted to call the red and take the joker. Can I do this? So as a hint, we always remind people you cannot do a reverse joker exchange. You can never claim a tile from the table for anything other than a new exposure. So as you guessed it, the answer is no. Only the player who discarded the red could do the exchange. However, I feel that a however should have been put there, maybe to make it a little clearer. Once the tile's discarded, it's unavailable to be exchanged for a tile within an existing exposure. Down is down. So some additional commentary from us. To clarify, when they say only the discarder, they would have had to do it before they discarded. So only the player who had the red could have done the exchange. Once they either said red or the tile is on the table, it is now too late for anyone to make that exchange. Once down, it is too late, or once fully named, it is too late. And just as a reminder, we know the league has limited space and can't go into that many details, so we are expanding on the answers here. Question 10. Player B received an 8 crack during a joker exchange, though she called for a 3 crack. She realized the mistake. Player A, who passed the 8 crack, had the 3 crack in their rack. Player B with the exposure had not yet discarded. Is player A allowed to take back the 8 crack and give the correct 3 crack to player B so a proper joker exchange can be made? Any guesses? Yes, the correct tile can be given to player B as long as A has not yet discarded. So Mahjong is a looking and listening game, and if the person who has the exposure on their rack accepts the wrong tile, and then a discard is made and the game moves on, later on, if they have 2 8 cracks and a 3 crack on their rack, they would be dead, and the person who gave them the wrong tile, there would be no penalty. So make sure if somebody is giving you an exchange for a joker, make sure they are giving you the correct tile. Question 11, a player had written in, I do not understand the new rule that the call tile should be racked. So the league goes into an explanation. We have always suggested a call tile be placed on top of the rack rather than in the rack itself. We decided to make this an official rule, although there's no penalty incurred for incorrect placement. Players should place the call tile on top of the rack, but the player is not called dead by not doing so, as in many tournaments. We felt that penalty would be too severe for home play. As you know, table rules supersede NMJL rules. So if the members of your game wish to amend the rules, you may. So some additional commentary from us. It's a great idea to discuss this before gameplay. What happens in your group if someone racks their tile in the sloping part when they call a tile rather than claiming it and putting it on the flat part and then adding exposures? Will their hand be dead? If you're tournament players, you might want to agree, or practicing to be in tournaments, that you would call your hand dead as practice. If you are more casual players or more lax, then you might say that's something that's too severe for home play. So something that you definitely should all discuss. Now on to question 12. Player A discards a 1 dot. Player B discards a 1 dot and names it same. Is it permitted to name the second discarded tile in this scenario above same? So in their answer, the league gave explanations of what it's permissible to call a follow-up tile. They said it can be named in these 3 ways. Same is totally permissible in today's rulings. Note, 1986 rules have been altered in many areas. 2, the name of the actual tile may also be called. And 3, in the case of a joker being discarded, the first 2 rules always apply, same or the name of the tile, and the word joker may be applied here. Question 13. During the Charleston, one player had 15 tiles and another had 12 tiles. What happens? So the league answered that the game doesn't officially begin until East discards the first tile. Therefore, any mistakes during the Charleston result in a do-over. All tiles are thrown in and a new game is begun. Some additional commentary. There's one exception if the player to the left of East, which would be the last player to pick their 13th tile, if they are short 1 tile, they can pick. They're permitted to pick their 13th tile, and then the game begins. Once again, the league included a new rule, which is very similar to the rule from the 23 Bulletin. A tile that is called for either an exposure or Mahjong must be placed on the top of the rack. And as they went over in, I believe it was question 11, they're not a strict penalty if this is not followed, but it is a rule. And we hope baby steps to get players to practice best practices. We go into our visual companion guide for American Mahjong that it is best practice to first call the discarded tile, because this way you are making sure once you call it and pick it up, you're making sure it's the tile you thought it was. And then after you put it on the flat part of your rack, adding tiles from the sloping part of your rack. This is best practices and could prevent your hand from being calling dead. So we would love to know how you did with answering all of these 13 questions from the Bulletin. We will update in comments when we find out more information from questions from the league. And we hope that you have a great day.